climate change and the impact on sea levels, and some of the predictions that we have certainly have seen through from the international organisations, and our responsibilities to, say, the Pacific Island families. Clearly it seems to me to be cheaper to help them to stay home than to have to accommodate them if their land goes. So should we be doing more in our own backyard as well as what we're doing here in our own country?
Well, sea level rise is an interesting proposition. So the scary figures come out of models. The growth in sea level rise for about the last 100 years has been somewhere around 3 millimetres a year. There's been no increase in sea level rise, basically, on the east coast of Australia. The reason for that is that the continent's moving north and the West Australian bit's tipping down, so you wouldn't want to be up near the top of, in your beachside property near the top of Western Australia, because they're going down about 7 millimetres, I think it is. But we've been going up, so that's cancelled out the sea rise. So you can look at records from Fort Denison down in Sydney, and it's been zero increase. So you'd need to get significant increase in ice melting. The ice that's on the water doesn't contribute to sea level rise, so most of the stuff in the Arctic, the polar ice cap, it's like the ice in your glass of scotch, doesn't affect the level. Antarctica is the one you've got to worry about. However, Antarctica is below zero most of the time, and even under your 1.5, 2, 3, 4 degree scenario, we'll still be under that. We'll be in a world with possibly more water in the atmosphere, meaning that there's probably going to be more precipitation down there, possibly more water being taken out of circulation than is actually going into it from melting around the edges. So, I'd wait and see on the water issue. In Australia, it affects towns that are ports, but towns that are ports are always going to be affected by sea level rises or decreases. If you were building a port in Queensland 15,000 years ago, it wouldn't have been in Brisbane, it would have been about 100 kilometres to the east, because that's where the sea was. We've had sea levels a couple of metres in the last 10,000 years higher than they are now. So that'd give us a little bit of trouble in Brisbane, but probably not that much of significance. When you look at the islands, the coral atolls have dealt with about 150 metres of sea rise over the last 15,000 years. The latest study that I saw, which I think was done by Auckland University, showed that most of those islands were actually increasing in size. So again, I'm not sure there's an issue there, and I'd wait till people came knocking on the door to see where they need help. I mean, I'd be very quick to move if there was a real issue, but at the moment, I haven't heard of anyone leaving any of those islands because they're genuine climate refugees.
Okay. Unlike some of the more uncertain aspects of climate change, the landmass of islands is something that's relatively easy to measure and track. So I might encourage some Googling on that one as well. But I think there are two things. First is the main cause of sea level rise is the ocean expanding. It's thermal expansion because the ocean is getting warmer, because the climate is getting warmer on average because of climate change, because of CO2. And so it's not actually just about the ice melting, although the reason that Brisbane would have been significantly inland is because all the ice from the last ice age melted, and that's why sea level rose. So I think it's worth just acknowledging how significant those changes can be. They are not linear. They're not linear, so it's not about watching a little iceberg get a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. There are effects on, ice shelves in Antarctica and in Greenland that are non-linear, and once they've passed, they're catastrophically passed. You can't glue the iceberg back on. It goes away and melts in the warmer ocean. So I think the risk is real, and the residents of those islands have said it far more poignantly than I ever could, sitting here on the nice, apparently neutral ground of Eastern Australia. But I think what the question kind of drives to beyond those physics is the moral obligation of those of us who have emitted the carbon, those of us sitting here in our privileged environment, to go and help out those who are now affected by it. And it's true for the Pacific Islands. It will be true for extreme climatic events, which we know will increase in both severity and frequency. We've seen that already. It's not that they never used to happen in the past. I think it was Robin who mentioned the flooding in Germany that happened 800 years ago. It's not that they've never happened. It's that they're going to happen more and more, and they're going to be worse and worse. And so those of us who caused it, those of us who were part of the system that caused it, those of us who live here our very comfortable lives as a result of 200 years of emitting that carbon, I think do have a moral obligation to go and help those who will be affected by it, even though they did not contribute. And so I think, the generosity and the open-mindedness that we need to show in that is, again, that leadership, that possibility of hope for those who will be the most affected by our actions.